You know that feeling, right? You open your fridge to find something kind of fuzzy that was perfectly fine just a few days ago. Well, today we're going to dive into that age-old battle against food spoilage and the fascinating science we use to win it.
I mean, really think about it. How is it that a jar of pickles can just hang out in your fridge for months and be totally fine, but a carton of milk, you're lucky if you get more than a day or two before it turns? This simple, everyday puzzle is really at the heart of food preservation.
It turns out every food is on a kind of freshness clock. You've got your perishables, like milk and meat, that spoil really fast. Then, in the middle, you have semi-perishables, like potatoes, which can last for weeks. And at the far end of the spectrum, non-perishables, like grains, that can literally last for months. So, what makes these clocks all tick so differently?
To figure out how to keep food fresh, we first have to know what we're up against. Let's meet the enemies. There are these invisible forces and tiny creatures all working around the clock to break our food down.
The three main culprits are microorganisms, enzymes, and of course, the ones we can actually see, insects and rodents. Let's break down what each of these enemies is actually doing.
So, first up, we have the invisible invaders, microorganisms. These tiny bacteria and fungi are just everywhere. They're waiting for an opportunity, and they basically treat our food like a giant all-you-can-eat buffet. And all that feasting, that's what we see as rot and decay.
But what's really wild is that sometimes the enemy is coming from inside the food itself. Enzymes are these natural compounds that help a banana turn from green to yellow. But here's the catch. They don't have an off switch. So if you just leave them alone, that ripening process just keeps on going until the food literally breaks itself down.
And finally, we have the most obvious enemy, insects and rodents. They don't just take a few bites, they contaminate, they damage, and they can make a whole pantry of food totally inedible.
All right, so now that we know the enemy, how do we fight back? Well, over thousands of years, humans have developed this really clever playbook of strategies to stop spoilage in its tracks and make our food last way longer.
Let's start with the one we all use every day, temperature control. Popping something in the fridge is like hitting the slow motion button on bacteria. It slows their growth way down. Freezing, though, that's like hitting the pause button. It stops all that microbial activity almost completely, which buys us a whole lot more time.
Now, on the flip side of cold, you've got heat. High temperatures are a fantastic weapon. Things like boiling or pasteurization for milk are super effective because they just kill all those harmful microorganisms outright. Okay, this next technique is just brilliantly simple. Every living thing, including bacteria, needs water to survive. So, what if you just take the water away? That's exactly what dehydration does. When you remove the water from things like fruit or meat, you're creating this little desert where bacteria just can't grow. Simple as that.
Then we get into a little kitchen chemistry. Everyday things like salt, sugar, and vinegar, they're not just for flavor. In high enough amounts, they make the food a really hostile place for microbes. That's the whole secret behind why pickles last forever in vinegar, or why jam is perfectly safe with all that sugar.
And here's a more modern trick, irradiation. This process uses these controlled waves of energy, kind of like microwaves, to disrupt and kill microorganisms. The cool part is, it can make food last longer without ever having to cook it.
So we have all these amazing techniques, right? But why does this stuff matter so much? What's the big picture payoff for being able to keep our food fresh?
Well, the benefits are just massive. For us, it means less wasted food, which saves us money. It's the reason we can eat strawberries in the middle of winter. And on a global scale, it's about food security. It lets us store food for emergencies or when times are tough.
And you can use these same principles right in your own kitchen. For your dry goods like grains, pasta, that sort of thing, the mission is simple. Keep them dry and keep them sealed in airtight containers to lock pests out. And, some people even add a bay leaf to the container. It's an old trick that can help keep insects away. At the end of the day, the message is really simple, but it's powerful. Preserving food isn't just about fighting some mold. It's about respecting our resources, looking after our health, and, being a little more self-sufficient. And all this leaves us with one final, really crucial question. We have this incredible playbook of techniques, right? Honed over centuries. We've pretty much mastered the science of stopping food from spoiling. So why, in a world with so much knowledge, is food waste still such a massive global problem? That is definitely something to chew on.